Hi, everyone. Good evening. Carl Steinbeck here. Just want to talk about the Karen Reed case, Commonwealth of Massachusetts versus Karen Reed. And she is not in court today because apparently she was sick. And so the court was canceled this morning. The prosecutor showed up. The defense counsel did not. And so hopefully Karen is recovering well and she'll be back in court tomorrow. But anyway, so this day was a day off for the both sides to prepare extra, and I understand that apparently there was going to be some a couple of folks that Hank was bringing in to talk about some kind of fight in Aruba, where Jen thought she saw John kissing somebody down in the lobby, and so that's how weak this prosecution is. That they're just trying to do some sort of like mud smearing of Karen Reed, and they think that she's some kind of a psychomaniac that's just going out to try to kill John O'Keefe. I mean, it's just fallen so flat on deaf ears with the jury. But Hank's so tone deaf. Hank Brennan, the prosecutor, he's so tone deaf. So he's going to basically cut bait on a lot of witnesses that I think he's otherwise preparing for. And he certainly doesn't want to bring any more ones with baggage. Pretty much everybody's brought in and had unbelievable baggage except for the weatherman. And so this one here, I thought today, was there something tonight I could cover that would address where I thought Hank was at in terms of what he promised to deliver in his opening statement? So why don't we go through the opening statement here and be reminded of what he talked about this case was about. And you'll see we've had over 3 weeks into this case. We still don't even have the autopsy photos other than the one photo of John's arm and a brief couple photos of his legs. But that was introduced on cross-examination. It wasn't introduced by the prosecutor. So this is really the most bizarre prosecution case for murder you could ever imagine. And it really indicates that the prosecutor knows he's got a loser of a case. So let's go and see these indicators on his opening and see what he's delivered on and what he hasn't. So with that, if you have questions throughout, please use a red emoji. Please keep your comments clean. Any kind of profanity or gutter talk, stuff like that, we're going to strike. And so please, I want to keep this professional, courtroom level stuff. If you wouldn't say it in front of a judge you're having a case in front of, then don't please use it on this channel. So I was sorry for me being late here. I had a tab. I had the 2 tabs open, I guess, in StreamYard, so there's echo effect, and so it took a while to figure that out. But thankfully, my wife bailed me out on that. So let's go ahead and get started here. I'm just not tech savvy, as you might know. All right, that's the scorecard we'll get to later.
Thank you, Your Honor.
This is from the trial channel. You had pretty good audio. Some of the original Boston one, like Boston 10, they had some hiccups in it.
At 6:04 a.m. on January 29, 2022, the alarm bell sounded in the Canton Fire Department. Firefighter paramedic Timothy Meadows knew it got met. His heart skipped a beat. He raced to his equipment and he picked up his bag, which was meticulous. There was a sound.
Can you believe that? He started an opening talking about a day in the life of firefighter paramedic Nuttall. That's how you started out? Right there is a clue this guy's got a loser case. So right there, me having done so many jury trials, I can tell you right there when I hear this guy talking about 6:04, you'd expect to hear something going on like right away how the incident happened. Not a morning in the life of a firefighter paramedic. So right there, you know, he's got something he's trying to hide the ball on.
Time and a signal, and then there was a voice commanding that there was cardiac arrest. The most serious of calls for a firefighter paramedic, that means that a person's heart has stopped.
Okay, so what he's doing, he's highlighting this EMT guy Nuttall because he can't highlight Jen McCabe. So right there, look, we're just a few seconds into this, and we already see he's trying to hide Jen McCabe, who's the one calling 911. And because the 911 call shows something really squirrely going on, that's why he can't address it. So to make this thing come alive and make it so, oh my gosh, listen to this. He's trying to make this like an action movie to listen to all the trauma and drama going on and how Karen is behind all this. Well, listen to what he's saying here. He's talking about Nuttall because he knows Jen McCabe. He's trying to hide that from the jury. He wants to get away from that as much as you can, even his opening statement here.
He didn't know who it was. He didn't know where it was. He took his bag. He had just gotten to the station, and he rushed to the ambulance. He was one of the most senior paramedics that morning. Another paramedic, Anthony Flamati, would be running this mission. He jumped in the back of the ambulance. The door shut, and they headed off.
I mean, you're even talking about how the doors were shut. They jumped in the ambulance. I mean, this is like so much an indicator. This guy's like, he's either got really good facts and is a terrible advocate, or he's got bad facts and he might be a good advocate, but he knows he's got a loser case, or he's bad on both.
The 34th Fairview Road. As they drove, firefighter Nuttall could not see anything. He couldn't hear anything other than the engine from the ambulance.
The engines from the ambulance. I mean, this reminds me of exactly. Remember, those of you that were following me on the Dr. Charlie Adelson case in Florida over a year and a half ago, when his trial went on down in Tallahassee, when his defense attorney started talking about the traffic down in Miami, I just had to laugh because you know that he's got nothing to go on. He didn't give anything for the first 45 minutes on what actually happened, and he started talking about how bad the traffic is down there. So this is sort of like this thing with Nuttall. It's absolutely nuts to be talking about the moment by moment exciting, build up to how Nuttall got to the scene.
You could feel it sliding across the road. It was near blizzard conditions. He calmed himself. He studied himself. This is what the firefighters and paramedics are trained to do, to focus. And he focused on his task. He looked around the back of the ambulance to make.
Yeah, and you can't focus on your job, which is proving a murder case, because you got loser witnesses from start to finish, which that's what we've seen so far. So let's go through.
Make sure all the tools were in place. The ambulance was meticulous as well. This was Anthony Flamati's ambulance, and it was well stocked.
Well, now we need to know whose ambulance it was. Flamati? I mean, we haven't even seen this guy, have we? Why is he mentioning his name here in opening statements? So he's trying to focus on two EMTs and how clean the vehicle was, how it's sliding around because of the blizzard. He can't get off this Nuttall opening because he's trying to build up to some dramatic opening here, but he's just falling flat on his face.
He calmed himself and he thought about what was going to happen. What should he be looking for? What is his next steps? He played the scenario through his mind, and every calm was above him. As the car pulled up to 34th Avenue, the ambulance, he stood at the back door, the doors open, and he stepped out into Bedlam. He could hear a woman screaming and shrieking, the cold, hard air stomping on his face, and the wind, blizzard conditions swirling around him. You will hear him tell you how he trudged towards those screams in the darkness to snow, and when he got there, he saw three women surrounding a man lying, not moving on the ground. He walked up to the man, and he reached down, and he tried to find any signs of life, pulse, anything, and he found nothing.
Yeah.
And he got up and he walked over to the woman, and he walked over to that defendant, Melody.
Yeah, there's no physics, there's no medical, there's no forensic type evidence that he's introduced so far that establishes anything to show Karen Reed is guilty. And yeah, he's doing all this hype. He's trying to hype up the jury, whip up their emotions, all to try to score points. But We'll talk about whether he actually delivers on any of this.
And he told her that he thinks that man is gone. And then he heard the yell from Anthony Fomati, the chief, and he said, "Come back, let's go." Because you'll learn that in the cold, even if somebody's heart stops, even if they're presumed to have passed, sometimes you can still save a life. So you'll see on a gas can video, you'll hear from testimony, he went back to that man who's John O'Keefe. He went back to him and that crew, whoever made it up, they did everything they could to save his life. They got on their knees, they began CPR, and firefighter Nuttall will explain as he kneeled over John O'Keefe, he looked up, and the defendant approached him, and you'll see it on the video.
This is so bizarre. He's still going this far into the opening with Nuttall.
Now, he wanted any information, because when you're trying to save someone, you want to know, are they on drugs, medication, do they have a heart condition? And he looked up at Miss Reed, and he said, "What happened?" And you'll hear her words through firefighter Nuttall. She said, "I hit him, I hit him, I hit him."
So listen, look at the way he does that. So like snarky with "I hit him, I hit him, I hit him." That's not the way Kieran was talking. He doesn't talk about the emotions of Kieran, right? He's trying to talk about, how, Nuttall was like trying to do his job and do it perfectly. And he goes there and arrives at this very disturbing scene and trying to make it pull on the heartstrings, as you mentioned. So what do we see here? He's just basically trying to use this then to mention what Kieran says. "I hit him, I hit him, I hit him." Like she's proud of it. "I hit him, I hit him, I hit him. And I'm proud of it." Right? That's the one thing he isn't saying. So he's not putting off the right connotation for this at all. So right here, you see the spin he's already doing. He doesn't do the 911 call. He doesn't talk about any buildup what led to this. He's just going straight to, how can I make this an emergency, but I can't make an emergency and involves Jen McCabe. Because my gosh, she's like an absolute disaster for me. So I need to make it about somebody else. So who can I make this more of an urgency towards trying to help John O'Keefe? So I'll make it towards an EMS guy. And then the one, because he supposedly talked to Jen and he thinks that she said, "I hit him, I hit him." Well, he's saying it 3 times. Keep in mind, he never said that in the previous trial. He said it 2 times. So that right there shows you he's trying to put a spin on it and do the most embellished version of Nuttall's discredited testimony. So he's not scoring any points here on advocacy. This is really a bad job.
And it was at that time, with the words of the defendant, that she admitted what she had done that night, that she hit John O'Keefe. Now, those words didn't mean anything to firefighter Nuttall. They weren't in context. They didn't reconcile with the injuries. It didn't help him in his treatment, so he ignored it. Now, firefighter Nuttall is not a police officer.
Still talking about Nuttall.
He is not an investigator. He is not a detective. He's a first responder. And so he takes.
I'll show you the main points he made in this scorecard, and you guys can see how this opening is really disjointed, very disjointed, hard to follow. Look, he's pacing forth and back like he's working at the as a guard, military guard at the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier.
That information
really bizarre.
It's useless to him. He continues to work on John O'Keefe, trying to save his life. You'll see the team put him on a stretcher, and when they lift him from the ground, even though there is snow accumulating underneath John O'Keefe, is simply grass, hard ground, frozen, and beneath his body lays his cell phone. They bring him to the ambulance, and while they're bringing him to the ambulance,
yeah, his body's, smashed to smithereens by this car of Karen, but yet his cell phone is conveniently laying right where it's so easy to find, so you can't lose track of that. How nice of gravity to work so convenient for law enforcement here.
See on the videos that other first responders speak to the defendant. One first responder, Mr. Fomati, she will say, "I'll hit him, oh my God, I hit him." And then she was interviewed.
His voice is just so low. He doesn't talk with a commanding presence. He's just looking really, really low energy here. It looks like he's almost embarrassed to present this garbage to the jury.
Or ask questions for background information. not a criminal investigation, his background to try to help John. And she was asked questions about his background. And during that conversation, you won't hear see the defendant was a person by the name of Jen McCabe and a firefighter McLaughlin. And she tells Fire McLaughlin was her first responder as a kid. They bring Mr. O'Keefe to the Good Samaritan Hospital, and his body is cold. The doctors work feverishly. They treat him, trying to save him. They try to warm his core. And unfortunately, firefighter not all first instincts is accurate. John O'Keefe passed. So why are we here today? We are here today because John O'Keefe was killed by the actions and conduct of that defendant, Karen Lee. You will learn through this case, through facts, science, and data, you will learn that on January 29th, 2022, when the defendant and Mr. O'Keefe were in front of 34 Fairview Road, all the way to the left side and the back corner of the flagpole, you will learn that Mr. O'Keefe got out of the car. He got out and he stood by the side of the road after an argument with the defendant. That argument, that anger fueled by heavy intoxication, you will learn from the science and data as he stood by the side of the road, the defendant in her SUV drove away. She drove at least 35 feet away. The argument was over. It had ended. But then she stopped.
Okay, he's making up thing about the argument. There's no credible testimony so far about an argument.
She stopped. She put the Lexus into neutral, and she waited. And the facts and the science and data will tell you that despite the fact.
Facts and science, yeah, we haven't heard it yet. After over 3 weeks of testimony, we haven't heard any facts and science yet. You know why? If he believed in it, he'd get that front and center, because he knows these witnesses that he's been presenting have all major baggage and they're not credible, except for the weather guy.
The argument's over. He then put the Lexus into reverse, put her foot under the gas pedal, and began to press, not 25%, not 50%, up to 75% acceleration. There was a light dusting of snow. The Lexus tires spun backwards. She went backwards at least 70 feet. She clipped John O'Keefe.
Yeah, they keep changing the timeline. They keep changing the distance of travel. And like some folks have said, the Lexus is not going to spin out like that and be able to go 24 miles an hour in bad weather.
He fell backwards, hit his head, broke his skull, and then he lay at the corner of Fairview.
He doesn't describe exactly how he got hit. He just says he got hit by the car and he hit his head backwards. I mean, he can't even describe any details, where he was standing, where he was in relation to the house. He's not presenting any exhibits to show exactly where it's happening, because they don't know how it happened. It's all a complete hot mess crime scene, and they're just trying to guess where he was at. They don't really know. They're just thinking that's where he was when they showed up. They don't know the exact location. Just like they don't know the exact location of any of the so-called plastic taillight pieces.
Fairview Road, on the ground, lying on top of his cell phone, alone. And then the defendant will later tell that when she left, he didn't look mortally wounded. Yet he was. And she simply drove away. Now, before I tell you about the data.
All right. Coley, you're asking, can Proctor take the fifth, even if defense calls him? Another attorney in Massachusetts said he could do that today. And if he does, can his testimony first trial be read in court? Yeah, he could plead the fifth if he was my client here in Texas, and this whole case happened in Texas, I would not let him testify without some kind of immunity. And no, the first trial, his testimony, if he's not available and it's exculpatory, they would maybe have to request his videotape deposition because he's unavailable. So, in what parts you want to bring in, all that kind of stuff. I think they would just not even call him at that point.
Through that, I'd like to tell you a little bit about John O'Keefe. John O'Keefe was a young man, a local kid, very well liked. Well, John O'Keefe is the son of Peggy O'Keefe, John O'Keefe Sr., and the brother of Paul O'Keefe. Grew up in Canton, worked hard, he became a police officer. But what you're going to learn, the fact that he worked for the Boston police officer, as a Boston police officer, was just a fraction of his life. It was a small, really unimportant part, because the biggest part of John.
Look at how low energy, uninspiring. He's putting jurors to sleep. It's early morning. They're like, gosh, how much longer is this thing going to last? We need to do something else other than listen to this boring speech.
John O'Keefe he was a family man. From the traditional sense, you see, John O'Keefe never had biological children. John O'Keefe was never married. But John O'Keefe had a sister, and she had 2 children. And when the children were 6 and 3 years old, his sister unfortunately died. And shortly after, his sister's husband died. John O'Keefe was at home. He didn't sit by. He saw these 2 recently orphaned children, and he stepped in and he said he was going to raise them. So he put aside his career, he put aside his job, and he moved in with the children and raised them like they were his home. They were his passion, his love. He was a new parent, successes, failures, like all parents. And he raised the children with the help of people in the community, with the help of his brother, with the help of his family. And they led a good life.
Boy,
Enter Karen
so
Reed.
weak.
Around COVID, the defendants and Mr. O'Keefe reacquainted, and they started a relationship. And you'll hear that even though the defendant had her own home, she was staying with Mr. O'Keefe a lot, 4, 5, 6 times a week. And to most of the world, it was a pretty good relationship. They spent time together, they did activities with the children together. She helped with driving the children, feeding the children. It was a steady relationship until about the beginning of 2022. And then things began to unravel. There was tension, there was arguments. In fact, just a few days before this incident, you'll hear that Mr. O'Keefe asked her to leave. But she wouldn't. You're going to be able to read text messages of their conversations on January 20, 2022. You will see the tension and the unraveling of the relationship. You will read about the discord between the defendant and Mr. O'Keefe. You will see that when he would ignore her calls, they would become incessant. When he would try to push away, she would come closer. You will read those text messages and you will realize that this was the beginning of the end of this relationship.
All right, so let's go through the scorecard here now. So here's what he's established. The main points that he was brought out, the main gist of his opening so far, and so we're not all the way in. We're about 11 minutes in. So let's just go through this now. The testimony of Timothy Nuttall. Those of you may recall, he was the first witness that was called. Instead of somebody that would be like the 911 call or medical folks or something other than EMS, he calls this Nuttall. Remember this guy that said his memory is clearer now than it was last year on this. When he said twice, she says, I hit him. Karen Reed, he's saying she said twice last year she hit him. And now it changes to 3 times. He says his memory improved with time. I mean, how can this guy be taken credible? He admits that Brennan was checking in last week and then again last night to make sure he sticks with the story about Karen hitting him 3 times rather than 2 times. I mean, this whole thing is so weak for the prosecution. He also, if you recall, in his 2022 grand jury testimony, said John O'Keefe was dressed appropriately for the weather and was wearing a heavy coat, possibly 2 other additional layers of clothing. And then in 2024, he then said he was wearing a puffy coat, sort of like what we saw Brian Albert at the bar, the Waterfall Bar. And now he says that wasn't true at all. And then he starts out, well, that part of my memory's faded in just 3 weeks after cross-examination by the defense. Oh, he didn't recall until the midway through cross-examination that Brennan also asked him about his testimony of what John was wearing, and so then he agreed his memory was fading on that. He did admit that John O'Keefe's injuries could have been caused by being punched in the face, at least some of the injuries. So anyway, so he's saying that basically Karen was saying, I hit him during a period of time when Nuttall was working on John's airway and the other firefighter was doing chest compressions. And then Jackson played the dash cam footage of the entire time period. At no point was Karen ever near Nuttall. So this one, his credibility was significantly damaged by cross-examination. So that's a win for Karen Reed. And for them to act like Karen is saying, I hit him, is like, you can't even say how many times she said it. She also, had made some comments like, did I hit him? Could I have hit him? Those kind of things. So it's easy to get those things confused. And if he's trying to help the prosecution and you're hearing stuff from other reports of what people said, your testimony is going to be malleable and you're not going to be credible. So he wasn't credible to score any points for the prosecution. All right, next, I hit him as an admission of guilt. What have we heard from the witnesses so far about Karen Reed and what she was confused about? And keep in mind, she just wasn't quite sure of what her whereabouts were because she had been drinking that night, was most likely taking some kind of medication. She's on MS. So this was never an admission, whatever she's talking about. Hey, did I hit him? Could I have hit him? Those kind of things. She's just trying to think of like, how could this happen? I saw him go in the house and now he's out there laying by the road. What happened? And so, of course, Jen is there to help shepherd things along that way. So I would say from here, this is, they're trying to make this look like an admission of guilt. And I think Hank Brennan is falling flat on his face. She's not a cold-blooded, heartless killer or a vicious, aggressive person like that. She just was trying to keep the relationship intact, but she also knew it was slipping away. She knew that John wasn't committed to her. So, and she even told him what we saw in the text messages, where she said, if you don't want to continue with me, just let me know. You will never hear from me again. So she was ready to punch out of the relationship. All she had to do was not lead her on and act like, yeah, well, I'm sort of like with you and I want to stay that way. So anyway, he was giving her mixed signals. So I don't think there's anything the Commonwealth established that's incriminating towards Karen Reed so far on that issue. Let me get this. Okay, John stood on the side of the road, was clipped by Karen, who was flooring it in reverse, fell back, hit his head, and cracked his skull. What have we heard from anybody this far into the case, over 3 weeks in the case? We don't have anything about this. There's no description. There's no physics type evidence to link Karen's vehicle to this vehicle strike that they're trying to claim. So right now, we just don't see anything about that. So I know they're going to be calling their accident reconstruction guys. So as of right now, they've not established any credible thing about this. And the timeline is what really exonerates Karen from this and all the people coming and going out of the house and driving past the scene, and also driving past the house and leaving the party before it got heavy snow. So that also helps clear things up, that this whole theory that Karen was around to cause that bodily damage on John O'Keefe is just not credible. All right, the next thing, this is the order of things that Hank talked about as well. So the next we have, a few days before the incident, John O'Keefe asked Karen to leave. We haven't heard anything about that, so I'll leave that. It was a question mark. And the next one here, text message show the beginning of the end of the relationship. This actually helps, I think, clear Karen that she's not the crazy person. She just was serious about John. She loved John. She didn't want to have the relationship end, but she's sort of getting the idea that he's not serious about her. She doesn't, it's not a mutual relationship. And so she's frustrated about it. That's why she's sort of like maybe saying, hey, maybe I can make him jealous because if I get Higgins to be interested in me, she wasn't interested in Higgins, of course. But she was leading him on, which she shouldn't do, but that kind of thing happens. And so in the end, I think there was definitely signs that things were ending, and it was hard for her to give that up. So she obviously loved John. And when she saw him on the side of the road there back at 6:04 in the morning, she was the only one that acted like she loved John. Nobody else did. And nobody even cared just to even be a good Samaritan to help him out that was inside the house there. So anyway, so that's where we're at so far. Let's go ahead and continue on with the opening.
Found nothing. And he got up and he walked over to the woman, and he walked over to that defendant, Lee, and he told her that he thinks that man is gone. And then he heard the yell from Anthony Flamati, the chief, and he said, come back, let's go. Because you'll learn that in the cold, even if somebody's heart stops, even if they're presumed to have passed, sometimes you can still save a life. So you'll see on a gas can video, you'll hear from testimony, he went back to that man who's gone.
Yeah, when he didn't show up to come back outside the house and say, hey, let's go ahead and come on in, or yeah, you're right, we should just keep going. She's thinking, hey, he just completely ignores me. He's maybe hitting on some other girl, some other woman. So yes, he's just trying to muddy the waters with these facts and making it look like there's a big fight that broke out before he got out of the vehicle. So there's no evidence of that. It's just all a theory he came up with, and it's a theory that's not based on any credible looking at the facts.
He went back to him, and that crew coordinated effort. They did everything they could to save his life.
Yeah.
They got on their knees. They did.
Does this guy look like he is so convinced that Karen Reed is guilty? Look at his mannerisms, his body language, the way his voice comes across. Does this guy look like he really believes in his case? I would say he knows he's got a loser case, and he's trying to do a good job of acting.
Began CPR, and firefighter Nutter will explain as he knelt over John O'Keefe. He looked up, and the defendant approached him, and you'll see it on the video. Now, he wanted any information, because when you're trying to save someone, you want to know, are they on drugs, medication, do they have a heart condition? And he looked up at Miss Reed, and he said, what happened? And you'll hear her words through firefighter Nuttall. She said, I hit him, I hit him, I hit him.
Wait a minute.
And it was at that.
Oh, we backed up here. Sorry about that. No one's sure what happened there. Okay, so
the cell phone, the only thing is John O'Keefe that you can have. And that night, John was using Waze. It also will have healthcare data. Healthcare data will show when somebody is moving. Sometimes it's qualified with stuff, so it doesn't necessarily mean somebody's stepping, moving their arms, walking, turning. It doesn't show what direction or how far, but it shows movement of a person. Okay. And the third thing, remarkably, will be an expert in this case, file the data file on the phone, and it tracks the temperature of the cell phone battery. That will be critical to your analysis in this case, the temperature of the cell phone battery. And so with that, I want to take you back to the timeline of that night. After the discord, both the defendant and O'Keefe decided they would meet at a bar called McCarthy's. McCarthy's is a local bar, a blizzard is pending, and people are getting together in a celebratory mood. They go to McCarthy's and you'll see a video of McCarthy's, and you will watch some Gordon Trophy friends and the defendant drinking alcohol. And you will count 8 vodka drinks that defendant Brennan. They arrive at 8:50, they stay till 9:45. You consume at least 7 of those drinks in less than 2 hours. The last drink, you'll see when they leave the bar, she puts it under her jacket, and they walk out and they go to another bar to meet other friends called the Waterfall. They reach the Waterfall sometime around 10 p.m. And when they go into the Waterfall, you'll see a video. And when I say celebratory mood, you will see a group of friends of John O'Keefe, many who are friends with John, and you'll see them clapping and happy and joyous as they're there. You'll see many hugs between John O'Keefe and his friends and the defendant in many of the people there. And they spend some time together, they're drinking, and they all do a song. So that will be at least the 8th within 3 hours.
Look at him pacing forth and back like that. I mean, he's not establishing any kind of connection with the jury. He's not coming across as credible, trustworthy. Those are like really critical things you need as a prosecutor, and he doesn't have that at all.
So you will see from the data, not just the cell phone data, but there's some other very important data. And the other piece of data that goes hand in glove with the cell phone is information on the defendant's Lexus vehicle chip. Black box in an airplane, or there's some type of event that captures a small amount of time. So that was captured in the defendant's Lexus. That black box information with the cell phone data will tell you everything you need to know in this case. It will bring us step by step through the entire night to figure out what's going on. And so they leave the Waterfall Club, and you'll see that the ignition goes on to the defendant's Lexus. And both John O'Keefe and the defendant in the car, and they decide that they're going to go back to 34th Fairview Road that we talked about earlier. They're going to go there for a get together for one of the homeowner's sons who's having a birthday party. And so as they drive back, you will be able to follow them to this location data when they go back.
What I'm hearing also, there's a report, Jessica Machado or something like that. She's saying that the jurors are really making facial expressions and taking notes with these kind of disastrous witnesses like they've had, for example, like Sergeant B. And so that's pretty much something that the prosecution will be picking up on. The jury's not buying your story, Hank. The jury sees it for what it is. So that could also be an indicator, if he has any idea how bad he's doing, that he needs to shorten up his case and be done with it. Because the jury, the longer you hold them hostage, the quicker they're going to come back, the more frustrated they'll be. So you might also just stick a fork in it and call it a day. That's true. The injuries do not reconcile with what his storyline is here. It's just not credible.
They don't know exactly where it is, and they get lost. And so John O'Keefe makes a phone call. A phone call with one of
low energy. Doesn't believe it.
And during that phone call, which the defendant listens to, because he recounts it, and trying to get directions, Jen McCabe.
You know, the one thing I'll give him credit for is that he's not reading off a script. But you better have a compelling narrative on what happened and not walk around like you're trying to like think of how this story unfolded and trying to sound credible and believable, like you really believe your story. I mean, it just comes across so contrived and fake.
It's near Bella's mom's house. We were in the Bella of her mom, with somebody that John had dated before.
Notice also he's not mentioned anything about where this John O'Keefe was found, right? Does he mention this? He was found at Brian Albert's front yard, a Boston detective of 30 years. Why isn't that mentioned? He hasn't mentioned anything about Proctor yet. He hasn't mentioned anything about Higgins yet.
They make their way to Fairview.
Where's Jen McCabe?
There's a road that comes down like a loop from a beach to Fairview. They take a wrong turn.
No details.
And then they do a 3-point turn on the driveway. That size driveway they turn into because some type of acceleration movement triggered that black box in the Lexus. And that's important. That's 7 minutes before the verdict. And you'll see from the ways exactly where the car was. You'll see from the black box, the event of the 3-point turn. turn in the driveway, and then a return down the Fairview. But before they get there, at 12:23, a truck is coming the other way. And the witnesses in that truck will say they blinked the lights, one of them saw a man and woman in the car, John and the defendant, and then they followed the Lexus because they were going to the same house. The truck stopped at the driveway, and the Lexus, the defendant's car, you'll hear of the way.
Talking back about the cars
second,
again.
the second never stops. It rolls very slowly all the way to the end of the yard in the corner where it's just the iron travel pole. And they reach that location at 12:34:33.
Don't know. We'll
And they're
find out in the
in the
morning, I
army.
think. They don't know how she's going to feel during the night and how she'll wake up in the morning, I would say.
Stay there. The truck waits. It's somebody in the house is coming out. The person goes back in the house and there for about 5 minutes. We're now down to 2 minutes before the collision. And now it's just the
That's what they
defendant,
said, yep.
John. And while they're waiting outside, 12:27, John gets a text from Brennan Cave, park behind us in the driveway. 12:29, he texts again, are you coming in? You'll hear that Brennan Cave others look out the window and see the defendant's Lexus in front of the flagpole at the far end. It's snowy, it's dark, it's windy, they're waiting. You will know that John O'Keefe was in that car, that Lexus, and didn't move because his healthcare data is not moving. It's not moving until 12:31:56. At 12:31:56, he begins to move. You will have 20 seconds before he falls. 20 seconds. He gets out of the car, the Lexus, and in that 20 seconds, you'll hear that user initiated. He looks at the phone, at the text message he generated. There's now 12:32:09. Close to the phone the last time. It will be the last time he uses that phone. From the last phone bar, you see that. And at that time, 12:32:09, last user, he has 7 more seconds to move before he lies dormant the rest of the night. We'll also have the information from the defendant's Lexus black box. The clocks run differently than 30-second counts, but it's right in the heart of that time. And you will see in the data at that time, when he makes his last movements with the phone, is when her car leaves 34 feet at least, stops, and then shoots into reverse, the tire spinning right towards him.
Boy, there's nothing to comment. There's no substance here. You're rambling on about.
Next morning, she tells the firefighter, I'm sad because our last moments were fighting.
No.
She drives away. They said he's made later statements that when she left, he didn't look more.
She wasn't some maniac saying, if I can't have you, then I'm just going to destroy your life because you're destroying mine. I mean, this is like so ludicrous.
He lies on the ground on top of his phone, light dusting of snow, the snow now picking up. And he's just there. It's 12:37. Now, when he's in the car, before he gets to Fairview, the battery temperature of that phone is 77 degrees.
Yeah, where's all the blood loss of John O'Keefe? That's a good point. I've been bringing that up almost daily. Where's the blood? Where's the blood? 3 liters of blood? Nowhere to be found. John O'Keefe was laying there right when there's a ½ inch of snow on the ground, according to this prosecutor's theory. So there should be an outline cleared of snow when the girl showed up at 6:04 in the morning to find John there. And you know what? There was no outline of grass. There was like at least 4+ inches of snow. They had to wipe the snow off his face, supposedly. Yet Jen says that they had to flip him over. At least that's what she told the 911 dispatcher. So anyway, none of this is making any sense for the prosecution.
77 degrees in the one car. Now that he's been outside the car for 5 minutes, drops to 72 degrees. She drives to his house. She makes a phone call at 12:33 after she left Fairview. She calls again at 12:36 and leaves a message. You'll hear it. And you will hear the anger and rage in her voice. She leaves a message. John, I fucking hate you. Pardon my language. You will hear the similar. And she leaves that message. He lies on the side of the road. He gets another text message. It's on his page.
So boring to listen to,
12:45.
isn't he?
Battery temperature. 61 degrees.
This got to be one of the worst openings you'd see.
He gets almost 40 calls from the defendant that night. His phone rings, but never rings. You'll hear from an expert that the light never initiates, the healthcare data never moves. John alone was only again in his phone. At 12:53, cell phone drops to almost 60 degrees. 12:59, the defendant leaves another message on John's phone. Now, she hasn't spoken to anybody. Nobody has spoken to her. But her message, you'll learn the message says, John, nobody knows where you are. And this is where the plot in the cover-up begins. The evidence will make clear that she knew.
Yeah, there's a cover-up, all right.
There. She did not call 911. She did not go back to him. She did not leave an anonymous tip. She left him. The night wears on. It's now 1:07.
Well, he's like,
Battery temperature 55 degrees. 1:14, she calls her mother.
When your own team doesn't even look at you in your opening, that is like bad news. You're like, he wants nothing to do with his opening. So he's sitting there, look at his ears are red. It looks like he's like, I can't believe he's talking all this nonsense.
No answer.
Thanks for showing. And then also thanks for my mod, Food is Love. I appreciate you.
The defendant had healthcare data on her phone as well, and you'll hear that it stops around that time. And the way to learn that she admits to falling asleep vaccinated. But then she wakes. 5 o'clock, she is frantic. She wakes up John's niece, and she is unintelligible. She is yelling, she's screaming, she asks for the niece to call Jen McCabe. She calls Jen McCabe, and you'll hear Jen McCabe recount either deep sleep.
Look at how one-sided he is. He doesn't talk about when Karen found John and how upset she was. He just makes it sound like she was gloating, or the fact I hit him. Yeah, he's this ultimate spin meister.
She wakes up and she hears, Jen, 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 screaming Jen's name.
Why don't you use that kind of emphasis when she found him injured in the front yard of that Boston detective?
John's dead. Hangs up the phone. Jen McCabe calls out. And then she, what's going on? And she told, well, I left him at the waterfall. That's the beginning of her. Tell Jen McCabe, I left him at the waterfall. Then called back and said, he's sorry to affirm. You did leave him at the waterfall. She hangs up. He then minutes later calls another person, Terry Roberts, a friend of John O'Keefe. Someone who's not friends with the defendant, but they know because they helped raise the kid.
I mean, if I'm on the jury and I'm hearing an opening like this, granted, I'm better at grading openings and closings and a lawyer's performance than a layperson, but this is like so boring. He's not able to captivate any of the jury's attention. They're probably just can't wait to get to their phones and do something else other than listen to this guy. And think about it. They've been held hostage with this guy's cross and directs for, I should say directs haven't been crossed yet, but for now over 3 weeks.
And they interacted. She had nothing to do with the night before. Wasn't at the bars. Was home with her family. She calls her and says, I think John got hit by a car. I think he's dead. No, Carrie, with that information, calls 911. She calls hospitals. You can hear her voice. She's concerned. Like him. And then she has another call from the defendant. And she tells the defendant, come to my house. I will help you look for him. And the defendant says, I was so drunk last night, I don't remember anything. Waiting for her to arrive, she learns she doesn't arrive. Instead, the defendant goes to Jen McCabe's house. Terry Roberts, the other friend, then goes to Jen McCabe's house, pulls behind the car. And when she does, she's on Bluetooth, and she can hear the defendant say, "My taillight's broken, my taillight's broken." And she looks, and the snow packed in the back taillight, she can see a piece of the taillight missing.
Yeah,
The defendant desperately wants to go to 34th Fairview Road. Terry Roberts takes over.
that's true. Born a Hawk guy.
Back to John's house. He's in the house when he didn't see him. So both cars, driven by Terry Roberts and then Jen McCabe, with the defendant, go back to John O'Keefe's house. You'll see a ring video where you see them go into the house and they look around, and you'll hear about the woman, Jen and Terry, enlisted into this house. Look for John O'Keefe, they cannot find him. And then when Terry Roberts comes into a room, she sees rather than looking, the defendant simply standing there, staring at the wall. At that point, the defendant insists they gotta go back to Fairview Road. They decide to take one car. Terry Roberts is taking charge. She's going to drive. They leave Mr. Reed's Lexus and John O'Keefe's driveway, and they drive back quickly and Fairview Road in blizzard like conditions. It is dark. They can barely see a thing. And when they get close to the
Yes, the defense should be able to play more of the interviews to put the full context and real completeness as you talk about here, Justice. But part of it also is like the juries, when they get to sort of like saturation of information overload, and the defense, I think, can streamline theirs to the more important parts. So playing an entire interview, the judge would not allow that. I don't think any judge would, but if there's some more that they need to introduce, they could do that, but definitely not. I don't think any judge will allow the entire interviews, nor would the defense attorneys want to do that. They want to do a quick strike, get through this evidence of what they have for the case in chief, and then let it go to the jury, because the prosecution hasn't presented enough to get a conviction. And so if they don't do their job of showing their proof beyond a reasonable doubt, then the defense doesn't need to spend as many weeks trying to disprove the prosecution's case, because, like I say, the prosecution has failed miserably.
The edge of 34 Fairview, you hear the defendant start to scream, "There he is!" Both women look and they can't see anything. She starts kicking the door. The defendant's kicking the door. "Let me out." Terry Roberts starts to turn and runs around, and she sees the defendant run exactly to where John O'Keefe is in the darkness. Just where she left him. Terry gets out of the car, starts to walk towards where the defendant is, and she sees the defendant.
Jury's still in the dark, and what are these injuries? They don't know. Other than what defense has shown on the photo of the arm, and they've shown his legs, John O'Keefe's legs.
Lying on her body. She can't tell who it is because the face is still covered with snow. And she comes over and looks, and she wipes off the snow from John O'Keefe's face. She realizes he's one of her best friends in the world, is John O'Keefe. And she starts trying to do first aid. They start to move him, and coincidentally at 6:06, when they start to move him, the cold air hits that cell phone battery. It drops from 50 to 43 degrees. And they try, Jen McCabe calls 911. And that's when a police officer arrives.
Oh, Jen McCabe called 911. So when police officer, he wants to completely skate over that. I think they will, and they need to ask for the police expert again. So, and I think they can show all the efforts that Hank Brennan made to block questions from coming out. Keep in mind the judge's order. Talk about how on cross-examination they can bring out poor police tactics and investigation techniques used. But the prosecutor here blocked a lot of questions from being asked, and the judge sustained it. So it's a complete sham farce court. You're not going to get justice in something like this. But they should try anyway.
And when they lift him, that cell phone battery that is shot down to 37 degrees, Terry Roberts picks it up and puts it in her pocket, and it immediately starts to warm as she moves to help get a data. Showing movement starts again. At that point, nobody knows what happened. The Canton Police Department come. You can see the police cars and cruisers. They're not sure, so they look in the area where John's body is and find a collapse from the bar. There's body. They find blood spots. They probably put the blood spots in plastic containers. They don't know what they're looking for at this point. There's no information. They don't believe or know that there's a crime. They just know that John O'Keefe somehow ended up there with the rolling glass in the blood. And so that morning, you can see the work of the police department try to uncover a little bit around his body to see what they could find, which is very little. And then, Terry Robert goes and picks up Peggy O'Keefe. Goes to the news and they go to the hospital.
It's I agree with you, Tall Glass. Very hard to listen to.
They go to the Good Samaritan Hospital, and Terry Roberts is walking. Peggy O'Keefe is going to go see her son, her husband. And as she walks down the hall, Karen Reed is also in the hospital. See, there was some reports that maybe she was upset or suicidal, so they sent her for evaluation to make sure she was safe. You'll hear Peggy O'Keefe tell her she walked down the hall and see her son. The defendant was screaming, "Is he dead? Is he dead?" As she walked by Karen, she stopped and she said, "Karen, what happened?" And you'll hear that Karen was excited and yelling, "Is he dead?" She stops for a second, he becomes stoic. He doesn't say a word. Peggy pays respects to her son, and then she has to go back home because she has to tell the children. Now, while she's out, the Kent Police Department send an officer to the house to make sure the children are safe because they're alone if they're home. And when the officer pulls in, he doesn't notice anything, but he's in the dash cam video notices something.
Now, this is torture. Listen to this guy.
They can't find the children. Ultimately, Peggy comes home, her friends have taken them, and they bring the nephew home, and he is distraught.
Look at the folks back there.
The door. It is the defendant and the father.
That one attorney for the defense, she's actually looking that way.
Open doors.
But pretty much putting everybody to sleep that we can see. For the most part, if they are looking this way, they're checked out mentally.
Grandson. They go upstairs. They're upstairs for about 15 minutes. They come down. Quickly they leave. Now they got there from the defendant's father, drove his wife and the father to that house. But when they leave, they take two cars. They take the Lexus to get the tail light with them.
I would think so. Granted, it's not a real case in law school.
Information they learn about the tail light. They learn information that she had told people next year.
You can't have that conviction in your delivery, and when it's just basically a mock case. But yeah, I mean, it's just so boring to listen to. But it's a prep of what's to come.
And on their way down, they decided they would get a warrant to take the Lexus. When they get down to Dighton, where the car is, you'll hear from Trooper Lieutenant.
Sorry to hear.
They went in, spoke briefly to the defendant. They took the car, they brought it back to Canton.
Okay.
So, what to learn from the forensic evidence of public science and data is that not only was the cell phone left behind, but also around that area, smoking taillight was littered around John O'Keefe's body. Littered around that area. When they got to the hospital, they noticed there was a shoe missing. As time went by, snow melted, the gun was found his shoe on a little berm on the border between the street and the grass. You learn days later when they did a plant excavation, they found his hat frozen.
Very upsetting to see this case.
Ultimately, they would find over the course of 10 days that the snow melted almost all every piece of that broken tail light in that area. His hat, the sneaker, the glass. When the defendant left Mr. O'Keefe behind, took with her something of Mr. O'Keefe's or trace evidence. You learn the back of a Lexus around the taillight area is John's DNA and stuck to the side, grasping one last piece of John O'Keefe's film. Now, John O'Keefe fell backwards.
Think about it. You guys can listen to this kind of dribble at least you're choosing that time to listen to it. You're maybe doing something in the house or at the office you're at or whatever, or you're driving. Here, these guys are captive. They're pulled away from all their normal lives to listen to this, and then you talk this slow, you're this low energy, and you don't give any captivating facts.
His head after he was
This is torture.
car. And you're going to hear from a very renowned doctor, a neurosurgeon, who has treated thousands and thousands of head injuries. And the wound on the back of the head, where he fell backwards, on the cracked skull, is called a basal fracture, to create an injury called countercrute. After he was hit by a car and fell backwards and hit his head on that hard rock ground, remember there's no snow, it's just a dust at this point. The back of his brain hits the back of his skull and bounces up.
See, now he's just meandering through. He's going back to the accident, vehicle strike now, and he's just circling around and trying to make it all come together, but he's not. He's just sort of like lost in the woods. No cogent, coherent, sequenced argument here. He's just sort of all over the place.
Bounces on the page by showing that impact.
All right, let's go back to the scorecard here. He says the collision occurred at 12:32:16 and no further movement from John O'Keefe. All right. That's a new thing, a new fact that he introduced at this trial. So guess what? It's I guess you need to exit to be able to move the slide. So hold on. So we know that the collision did not occur, and there wasn't a collision that he's proven so far because Karen Reed was already at One Meadow, which is where John O'Keefe's house was at 12:36. So it's like an over a 7-minute drive. So she would have left at 12:29 or earlier than that. So that's a win for defense. Karen tells a firefighter the next morning, "I'm sad. Our last moments were fighting." On cross, that was clarified that she was talking about an earlier fight, so that was discredited. So he was trying to bring up that they were fighting, and that was the last moments of it. So that was incredible either. And then also he tried to bring out in his opening. Karen said, "When I left, he didn't look mortally wounded." Okay, that one. She's not saying that she saw he was wounded. She's just saying, like, look, I never saw he's mortally wounded. I mean, she was trying to rack her brain, trying to figure out how could he have been injured? Did I do something? Did something happen and him come back to the car or something? I can't explain it. So she's saying he didn't look mortally wounded. Not that she saw that he was wounded. So they're putting a spin on that. They're not showing it in the context that Jen said it. I would say Jen didn't do herself favors by saying it that way, but when you know and see what Jen is trying to talk about and the way she talks, you can see she's not saying he didn't look mortally wounded because he did look wounded. She's not saying that. I mean, when you look at the whole context, everything she's saying, she's never saying she left there knowing she hit him and knowing he's wounded. So it's all just something they're taking out of context. Yeah, they got her on tape saying it, but you don't have the full context, and it doesn't make sense that she's saying, she was at right before this. She's saying, I was thinking about did I hit him? Could I not clip him, but could I have he'd slipped or something when he's walking by the car. So she was just trying to come up with scenarios of how could this happen? It made no sense. And so that's something that I think is unresolved fully until we see more of the context brought out by the defense. But just from that quick clip they showed in court, that's not something that is going to stick with being damaging to the Karen Reed defense, and it's not a win for Hank Brennan. So I just put that in the question mark column. All right, so let's go back to the rest here now. That's a good way to say it. Uh, Lubin Dubin, you're saying I wouldn't take that statement at face value if I was a jury, but he's just giving short clips. He's not showing broader context. And so it can be misleading. And I trust the jury is going to see it for what it is as well. Yep. Good point, Professor. No. Yeah, it's not evidence, but you talk about basically the roadmap, what evidence is going to come to light through you presenting your case in chief and any rebuttal. Here, he's really been striking out, as we see on the scorecard so far. Good. I believe it's because they do not want to emphasize that he's a police officer to maybe inflame the jury more, to think that they got to solve this for someone that's such a valuable member of the community. So I can understand why, if the judge told them to keep it out, just like they don't have the police officers wearing their uniforms in the court, they're all in suits. So it's along those same kind of lines. You don't want to get the jury thinking, hey, you're anti-police if you don't vote to convict Karen. So it's actually a good thing to help the defendant in any case. One thing I don't know is, like, has he won any big cases or any jury cases at all? I mean, I would assume if he's done a bunch of them, he's won some here and there, but I tell you, this is not impressive advocacy at all. There's a lot of people in law school that starting out could do way better than this. You got to have a likability to be a credible advocate in court, speak with conviction and persuasion and passion, and have tenacity during key points of your direct or cross. Well, you know what? Sorry. Let me back up.
It doesn't suffer from emotion entirely. It is facts, it is data. And that facts and data will lead you to the truth in this case. But after Ms. Reed was charged, she began what you'll learn is a campaign. A campaign to make public statements. 2020, Nightline, Fox 25, a documentary. And we've had an opportunity to get many of the statements and the footage, and we're going to show much of it to you. And her statements to you will confirm what you already know from the science and the data, what you will already conclude from the facts independent about what she did that night. Her word is simply confirmed that your judgment is sound. And you're going to hear from her own lips of many of her statements, her admissions to extraordinary intoxications, her admissions to driving the Alexis, her admissions to being angry at dawn that night. And I dare say her admissions.
It's just uninspiring. It's fake.
But to play for you, clip on.
Righteous indignation just not there.
That she made after she was checked.
This Daylight interview, October 18th.
I didn't think I hit him, but could I have clipped him? Could I have talked to him and incapacitated him? He didn't look mortally wounded as far as I could see, but could I have done something that knocked him out and in his drunkenness and in the cold didn't control that?
This would have been the moment you dropped him off at the party.
Yeah, would have had to.
Yeah, she's not saying that she saw that he was wounded. I think that's the spin he's putting on there. So he keeps peppering all of her little snippets in there. Just a lot of them are, most of them are just a few seconds. And so the whole context, the whole way Jen comes across and the credibility of Jen, you just remove that when you just do a short little clip. So the defense, I think, will show some more expanded version of it. But I think because of the whole prosecution is going so bad that they really can shorten a whole lot of their defense case in chief.
Ladies and gentlemen, I simply ask you to follow the evidence, follow the science, follow the data.
Follow the evidence.
Ignore speculation, surmise, conjecture. Stay true to the evidence. It will lead you to the truth. Then on January 29, 2022, a very intoxicated defendant was angry and arguing about the relationship with John O'Keefe. And after the fight was over,
yeah, I hope defense has looked into this because I've heard this from a number of folks that the it's actually a GX 570. It's the biggest Lexus SUV they make. It's got the big V8 engine in it, gas engine. And so there's so many safety devices in there. I don't think you could spin one out of control going that fast. So I agree with you, Ashley.
she left, but she brought the fight back to him in the form of her SUV. She clipped him, he fell backwards, he broke his head. And then this man who a lifetime of.
Yeah, that's the thing I've been saying here, Jam. You can, if you have the facts on your side, you got the truth on your side as a prosecutor. The last thing you want to do is try a case and get it reversed on appeal. You don't want that happening because all the work you did is a complete waste of time. But when you have a special appointed prosecutor that's only here to win, that's what you got. He's going to willing to throw everything aside. He wants to block everything that's constitutionally required for the defense to have a fair shake at this. You're going to object to all the key things coming in that should come in for the defense to show things in context, to show how bad the police quote unquote investigation was. But he wants all that kept out because, as I've said, the only way he can win this case is to hide the truth. So he knows the case is bad, and that's why he's got to block it. And if he's really good, he could let all this information in. He could let FBI retired agent Easter come in and testify. He wouldn't have to really hardly object to anything the defense is doing. But all these objections are just to deny Karen Reed a fair trial, and they're also keeping the truth out from the jury.
Help was left at the corner of that yard, left to die with no help. The facts, the data, and the evidence will bring you the truth, and the defendant's own words from everything you've already concluded.
All right, thank you, Mr. Jackson.
All right, there we go, folks. So that's wow, that's an opening on a murder case outside of Boston, Massachusetts. Is that not? Hold on, where did I go? There's so many tabs on this thing, you guys cannot believe, that I got to keep track of. It's very difficult at times, so sorry about that. All right, so if you have questions so far, get them ready. Go ahead and put them in with the red emoji. Whitey he lost like on 34, 35 counts. So learning curves, that's not his prize win. Okay, so here we have one at John O'Keefe's house with Jen and Carrie. Karen insists on going back to 34 Fairview. He made it sound like she insisted going back there because she knew what she had done to John to injure him, mortally wound him. And I mean, this is like so ridiculous. She was the one wanting to go back there. And we know Jen brought her back to One Meadows, and that took a lot of extra time. So they just sort of did this 1 hour waste of time. Maybe that could have saved John's life. So it looked like this could have been a stall tactic. So that's actually something that helps Karen Reed. She wanted to go back there. She was frantic. She woke up like at 4:38 on the 29th of January in 2022, and she realized something must be really wrong. She had the instinct something's really wrong because John has never done this before. He's never not shown up. And there's two kids, his niece and nephew, that lived with him after both their parents died, and she was the only one in the house with him. And for him just ignored all of her texts, something wasn't right. She had that intuition, and she was right about it, but it wasn't because she had done anything to hurt him. All right, so that one also in Karen Reed's column. All right, the next one, Karen was sectioned for possibly being suicidal. This also shows how upset she was, not because she's suicidal, because she had consciousness of some kind of guilt. So I think that one also is a win for Karen because she actually did act like she loved him. It wasn't. It was genuine, sincere. It wasn't any faking going on. And why would she be hollering at him if she just killed him at 12:32? Why would she be calling him names and chewing him out on those voice messages and blowing up his phone if it wasn't for the fact that she thought he was doing something like trying to seek out another woman? So all this makes sense on Karen's side. None of these stories make any sense for the prosecution. Every one of them falls flat. It's just non-credible. All right, so this next one, he talked about how the Lexus had a missing taillight piece. That one's still up in the air because we had some testimony from Karen Reed saying that she had a crack in her taillight and there's something was missing. But how do we know any of that was even at 34 Fairview? There's no photographs taken there right when they arrived. When the EMS and the firefighters arrived and the police, they didn't see anything right there. So that's really a misleading thing when you don't have any of these kind of photographs to show what happened. You don't have photographs when the Lexus was picked up, and the photographs actually look like the taillight was intact. So this whole thing about this taillight, I think it actually will help exonerate Karen Reed with the jury, especially when we have the ARCA experts to explain it, that this kind of damage does not come from an arm extended out along the side of a road. All right, Karen and her father went to O'Keefe's to offer condolences. This is not anything bad. It shows that they're classy people. Then they were upset. Karen loved him, and So this is that's a win for Karen. That's something else he talked about in his opening. And then back to the taillight, he circled back. So if you notice, look at the kind of stuff he talked about. It just shows like a meandering type, lost in the woods kind of opening. And so now he's circling back to broken taillights littered around the area of John O'Keefe's body. He used the word littered. Yeah, if they're littered around his body, how do we know it's littered around his body? No one ever took photographs of that. They're finding different pieces all over that yard area, supposedly. Yeah, there's nothing's staked out and marked as it should be. They never called CSI folks to do that. So everything of that sort is a botched investigation for the prosecution, and that helps the defense. So that's a win for the defense. And unless they have something else to bring brought out with their experts, they're trying to bring in similar experts as ARCA. So I'll just leave that in the question mark right now. And then what we have not heard, but we know that they're going to call instead of the medical examiner. So far we've not seen all the autopsy photos. Nothing's been introduced for autopsy photos by the prosecution. They're not going to call a medical examiner. They're going to call some neurosurgeon out of Florida who's going to opine that John O'Keefe suffered a contra coup head injury from auto collision. Contra is spelled incorrect, if I remember right. But anyway, the head injury from this doctor, it doesn't square with what the medical examiner and brain expert that they had brought in from the first trial. And so this is something that contra coup means that basically if somebody's hit in the front of the head, then they wind up having another impact to the back of the head, and then you see back of the head injuries, even though the initial strike was from the front. So that's what this guy's talking about. But in any event, Karen Reed has an alibi. So whatever this guy testifies to, experts don't all agree on what the injuries were to John's brain. And so in any event, that's still up in the air. And we'll hear more from the defense on that. So overall, if you look at this column, look what has the Commonwealth done so far. Look at how weak these different points are they make. Nothing of this is something I'd be proud of, ready to be wrapping up my case. Think about it. Haven't heard from Higgins. We haven't heard from Proctor. Those are huge witnesses that could further destroy this loss of momentum. Every day is another loss of momentum for the prosecution. They just don't have it. They're spinning their wheels. They're stuck in the mud. Tracy, you're saying there's nothing that can clean the stink of Proctor off this investigation. Reasonable doubt lives and breathes in the form of former trooper Proctor. Yeah. Full melt hash values. You're saying even if Karen did say she hit on the facts through, she didn't. It wouldn't matter what she said about it. And she was drinking the night. She didn't know what she really probably did see and didn't see. At least not to any 100% degree of certainty, as if she was completely sober. Blessed assurance, you're saying it sounds so bad for her. She's talking about when she found him, he didn't look morally wounded. Yeah, even if she's talking about when she left there, what time frame it was, it's not taken in the right context. He's putting weights on those clips because he's trying to get her words to convict her, to have the jury dislike her. But I think it's backfiring. I think the jury sees that she's the one that's been speaking out and saying how she's innocent and she wouldn't have done this to John O'Keefe. Yeah, Clayton John, Karen's no dummy. If she had done anything, it should have been obvious. She wouldn't blow up his phone with 50 texts and calls. Yeah, and then she's going to run to the area where he's laying in the yard and say, hey, I did this, I hit him, whatever, however they're saying she said it. It just doesn't make any sense. Constance Landers, follow the science. What science facts have you introduced so far? Really nothing. Nothing at all. Yes, Catherine Dinwiddle. It's more like a defense attorney than a prosecutor. Lisa, you've just seen a still pic of Higgins coming out of the office at CPD. You can see that his right hand is swollen and red and swollen. You have to see it. If you want to email that to me, I'll pull it up on the screen right now. I've had a number. Every day I get more emails, so thank you all that send stuff. Let me check my email. Learning curves. Yeah, he's deflecting a lot, skipping over the key details of the case. Anyone can see that. I think he had like, what was it, around a 37 minutes. So that all his opening was. You had 37 minutes and you gave that little substance, that little level of letting the jury understand how this all unfolded, how Karen Reed's guilty. He didn't describe the elements of the charges. All right. I just got a message. Yeah, I keep saying Jen when I mean Karen. Sorry about that. These names just sort of swirl around my head. Julie Nielsen, your biggest error, not addressing the many bad facts. Winger saying, took a look at her. She's leaving John's 5:30 morning. The taillight is not broken. Yes, she bumped his SUV, but the light was not broken. I believe 100% that is truth, and that somebody smashed out the taillight after it got to the Sally port. That's what it looks like. My head's swirling around trying to follow this opening statement because I mean the jury's just sort of like confused about it. So how can anybody think clearly after listening to Hank for 37 minutes? All right, so what I'm thinking is for the defense, I originally was thinking they absolutely need to call like Higgins, Proctor, Brian Albert. But I mean, the prosecution's done such a bad job. So what I tend to sometimes catch myself doing is like, I have a game plan of like, I got to get all this evidence in because I'm just going to crush my opponent. And then when the opponent is like just completely losing witness after witness after witness, they're just not doing good, getting all these points scored, and they're just basically crumbling, and they never get out of the starting blocks. So anyway, so I'm thinking like maybe they don't have to call any if they didn't made the decision not to call any of those three witnesses. Where are they at right now in this case? I mean, the defense really doesn't have to present anything except they're going to have to present ARCA because the prosecution has their own counter ARCA folks. So you need that as a counterweight. So really, if you have ARCA and Lucky, the snowplow driver, I mean, that really pretty much could do it for the defense. No way does Karen have to testify. You might want to do some expanded videos, but even if you didn't that from the interviews that they've shown, what do you have? So I'm just thinking sometimes you can lose a jury. I think the jury's so fed up with sitting there. And because I'm not there to read a jury, what I do is I read a jury, I read how frustrated they are with my opponent, and then I gauge how much I need to present based on that. If I know that the jury based on what we're getting reports on, the jury is sort of like, yeah, they get it. This case is like a complete joke. Hank hasn't done anything he needs to carry the his burden of proof. So I want to show you something. It made me think of something today. Stand by. Have you guys seen that Christmas Story movie where the bully gets taken on? The bad guy's named Farkas and Ralphie. So it's sort of like how much do you want to beat up the prosecution, because they're like the bully on the block right now in the neighborhood. But in any event, it's sort of like, do you really want to bloody up their nose that bad, or do you want to sort of let the jury be respectful of their time? So that's the thing I'd be balancing, and that would be determining how much I present. So you don't want to leave some like really good points you can score on there. So what if they didn't call any three of them? Would they maybe decide to call just Higgins? But Higgins looks so bad right now. So my email, Lisa, is you can send it to jury trial mentor. So jury JURY trial, and then mentor MENTOR at gmail.com. So meanwhile, let me go ahead and let me show this one more time. All right, so actually we covered all that. The trial's not over yet, so there's not a final grade. So here's the one I was. Here's Ralphie, main character of the movie.
Like snowball sandwich.
Here's the bully.
Maybe like another one. Listen, jerk. When I tell you to come, you better
Farkas.
come. What, are you gonna cry now? Come on, cry, baby, cry for me. Come on, cry.
Deep in the recesses of my brain, a tiny red-hot little flame began to grow. Something had happened. A fuse blew, and I had gone out of my skull.
All right. See, Hank's on his back. This is like symbolic of Hank on his back. Do you let up, and or do you keep punching him when he's down? All right, so right there, that's what I was thinking today. It's like, yeah, and because I want to be like very aggressively no stone unturned in presenting a case or defending a case, but anyway, it's sort of like, you got to keep in mind though, if you're ahead, do not pile on, do not run up the score. So yeah, that's a real house still in existence, I understand. They're in Cleveland, Ohio. It was filmed, I think, in the 90s, early 90s. They make it look like it's an older 50s or 60s movie. Anyway, All right, so I'm going to check my email now. If anyone sends me a photo that was referenced. Yeah, it's definitely hard to fight the judge. I mean, that's what I'm saying. A bully prosecutor like this couldn't get away with it if you had a normal judge that shut him down and see what he's doing. Brig Mill, you're saying I don't see how they can say she was drunk as a skunk, and yet on the other hand, she was saying I hit him. It should be taken as gospel, contradicting in your humble opinion. Yeah, I mean, plus all these cops are inviting folks that have been drinking over to their house, um, inviting Karen over with John, and John's drunk. Karen's been drinking, so that's what they do. They allow people to drive under the influence because they don't have to worry about getting in trouble for it. But it just makes them look bad. I mean, think about it. Karen's charged with DUI, and yet an officer was openly drinking in the vehicle she's driving, and now they're trying to make that as a DUI case. Okay, thanks, Christy, but I don't have the direct link to that. So you're telling me it's something on Video Jesus. Video hashtag Video Jesus on YouTube. On X, it's Video Jesus as well. If somebody wants to send me that directly, I'm not. I don't think I'm going to try to look that up here and find it. I'll wait a couple of minutes for it. I guess while answering some other questions. Denise Sanders, defense thought they won the last trial, so I think they'll put on a stronger defense. Well, I think the prosecution has gotten so much worse. I think that they're really scored a lot of points that they're just not carrying their burden of proof. And if they're not carrying the burden of proof, yeah, I get you. I can understand that's the thinking. You got to try harder this next go round, but I think that there's a thing like you got to read the jury, and that's why, without me seeing the jury and reading how they're reacting to the prosecution, if they have already, after they present all the rest of the case and these other witnesses, and if they bring the niece and nephew John O'Keefe, that's just so underhanded and despicable. Dragging the kids through this, but when it's all about a win, that's what can happen. So yeah, tail lights don't have the right hooks. They don't have the ability to scratch your arm up laterally. Yeah, the judge looks like it's her personal mission to make sure Karen Reed is convicted. Okay. Somebody also says there is a video by Micro Dots that shows this issue about Brian Higgins' hand. All right, stand by here. Well, this is 12 minutes. I guess I'll just jump ahead here. This is the same one we saw last night, though. Is there a different part of this? All right, let me back it up here. Okay. Why are the hands in the pocket if you're... Okay, I can't see anything there. Is there a timestamp on here? I mean, look, no, there's not a timestamp on here. Thanks, Cynthia, but I don't see a timestamp. So, yeah. All right. So if you guys can, do you guys know how to at least tell me where to look at? If there's a 23-minute video you sent, I don't want to hold up everybody doing that. So, appears like Frida. Yeah, leave the kids alone. They need privacy. Well, we know Higgins had his lawyer there. I've been talking a lot about why didn't they mention Jen's lawyer in the courtroom? He was there the entire time, apparently. Super high priced lawyer for the area. Probably one of the most expensive, if not the most expensive. Is highly reputable, and he was there every time she's talking as a witness in front of a grand jury or a trial. Yeah, that's true. Where's the burden of proof? Doesn't go over the elements. Doesn't talk about it. Karen Reed's presumed innocent, but I'll prove the case beyond reasonable doubt that she's guilty, and this is the elements. I mean, not every prosecutor has to talk about the elements, but I think in a very serious case, you should at least touch them for a few minutes in your closing. And I know there's chatter on what is that Brian Albert or Kevin wearing a Higgins sweater. Okay, let me see here. Okay, thank you. Check this out. All right. Well, look at that. This was on Justice for John O'Keefe. This is on, I believe this is on Facebook. Let me try to zoom in here. Wow. Look at that. Yeah, it does look swollen and red. Interesting. That is very interesting. I think that looks very incriminating. Wow, that's I think that's huge. Yeah, it's on X. I'm sorry, this is on X. This is huge in my opinion. What do you guys think of this? I'm going to look at your questions. Thank you. Look at that. I mean, it's like it's his hand's so swollen. It's like he's got a glove on it, but you can tell he's got bare hands. Heather, you think it's Brian Albert. So does Teresa M. Yeah, I don't know what he's holding. So food is love. You're saying he lied about the time he left, changed his clothes, swollen hand. And this looks so bad. Yeah. Blessed assurance. You're saying it's red and swollen. Yeah, that looks like a fresh. It looks like it's still swelling. Heather, you saying it's not Higgins because his nose is smaller? Yeah, I didn't find this. You guys are the ones sending it to me, so I appreciate y'all. If you guys think there's something I should cover on this channel, please send it to me. Yeah, I think Mayflower, you're saying Albert had an arm sling and black eye, seen a social media post with friends back in the time frame. Yeah, so remember Brian Albert got rid of his phone. Higgins got rid of his as well. And these guys are law enforcement types. They knew that there was a order to preserve from the judge, a protective order to preserve that evidence. And what did they do? They got notice ahead of time and they got rid of their phones. And they both lawyered up along with the McCabe's. Somebody's also saying his nose was bleeding. I really couldn't tell anything about the nose. Yeah, the defense did not bring this up. Yeah, I mean, you can't see it in the moving video screen. I mean, as well anyway. So I think doing fast, regular speed, you don't notice it. At least I didn't last night. No one mentioned anything about it last night. Yeah, I haven't seen a side by side of Brian and then Higgins and Brian Albert, and then compared it to this guy in the hallway. Yeah, we saw that Higgins used the right hand for his phone. Yeah, I agree with you, Leah. Brian Albert does not know the Canton PD Sallyport like Higgins does. I don't think he'd have any access to it. So unless he like told him here's how you get in. But then again, if you ran into somebody there that they'd say, "Hey, who are you? What are you doing here?" So I think it's got to be Higgins. Mr. Monk's understudy Andrew Burkhardt also posted on X. How could you run Albert? Yeah, that's a serious hand injury. So and we also saw the knuckles from Colin Albert. He had bloody knuckles. All 4 knuckles were bloodied. Yeah, the first trial they did not have this interior stuff. Reese, you're thinking Higgins shorter, fatter. The legs are tiny too. I think it looks too heavy to be Albert, and I just don't think Albert would have if he tried to dress and use the same entry code and whatever to get in there. I just don't see that happening. But anything's possible. This is all reasonable doubt, right? If they lied about this is a reasonable doubt. Yeah, he did have an office there at CPD. Brian Albert didn't. Yeah, he seems very sure where he's going. He also been there before because of Calvin Albert. I mean, the other thing is, yeah, Mr. Monks, you're saying Brian Albert's brother was a detective there and everyone in CPD looked up to him. Yeah, Peter Murphy would know what room. That's a good point, Rosemary Gallagher. All right, now let me see what I also have here. Oh, this is the Brady list. Okay. All right. So let me take a few more questions here. Well, let's go back. Hold on a second. I think. I think we go back. All right. Hold on a second. Let's go back to this Canton Police Department video. I mean, why'd you stand out in the cold like that? It's like it's around 15, 17 degrees and you're turned with your back like that. Messing with the phone. Look, he's looking at his phone. All right, so he's facing towards this camera more. He would know where this camera is also. So if there's a close-up of that, now granted, he's wearing the same type of sweater as we saw at the waterfall. The type of shoes, same type of shoes we saw Higgins in at the waterfall. And what's he doing there? What is that room? I guess that's where his office is. He's got black bottom shoes, just like they showed at 34 Fairview. That was supposed to be John O'Keefe's shoe. But then the ones they have in the evidence locker are white bottom shoes. So that makes no sense. It's like their shoe was planted there. Yep, that's true. They withheld this video from Karen in her first trial, and then Judge Cannoni refused to dismiss this, even though it's a clear Brady violation. It's like this is so many issues for appeal on this case. This is unreal. Yes, Wise Gal 81. Why didn't Nagel, Ricky, or Heather see Higgins' Jeep at 34 Fairview? He's supposed to still be there according to his testimony. Yeah, I mean, this is like the state's case just gets weirder and weirder. Okay, Amy said you called Jackson's firm, told him about the hand. All right, let's watch the language here. Let's look at what's... Yeah, so Brian Albert at the waterfall has had a beanie on. This guy looks like the hoodie's not on. Does that look more like a beanie? Wonder if somebody could do a comparison how they walk. Are you saying 6 minutes for missing from the cameras? Why not clear? Yeah, we don't know. Yeah. Okay, Gen X, you're saying my email jury trial mentor mentor at gmail.com. Yeah, Higgins could have had somebody else in the vehicle with him. Not really sure about that, are we? All right, so let me see what I got for emails. Stand by. One second here. Guys, send me something, please. Give me the date timestamp. I don't know if y'all know how to do that. Unless it's only a couple minutes long. Okay, let's see. Yeah, it's just really super strange. That's what it looks like. It looks like I think the jurors are going to think he's there driving all day down to New York City. Or I guess he was there maybe the day before and then coming back. It's like at least a 4-hour trip from New York to Boston. And then he's out at the bar drinking. And this is like 1:30 to 1:50 something in the morning. And you still got all that energy. Yeah, it does look like he's hoodies up and then down the hallway that's down in a beanie. All right, I'm just going to look over a few more comments and yeah, the photo with his hand, that's critical. And then he's also using his cell phone. Just looking through the comments here. Yeah, AJ Lowe. Higgins says 100% reasonable doubt for Karen Reed. Yeah, I mean this right here, reasonable doubt. This is one piece of evidence of reasonable doubt. If the jury can't pick up on this, and they didn't have this part, this really odd behavior video in the first trial, this is huge. I mean, this is such a Brady violation. I cannot believe it. But yet again, everything is everything's to get a conviction. And so that's why the prosecution get away with anything and everything. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and wrap it up here, folks. Thanks for your great attention. Thanks for forwarding me information to use here for the channel. And I plan to be back tomorrow night to cover tomorrow's trial. I trust that everything will be fine for Karen and that she'll be ready to proceed tomorrow. So with that, I should be on tomorrow night. So y'all have a good day, a good evening, wherever you're at. And thanks for supporting Justice for the Reads. And hopefully I'll see you tomorrow. Take care.